The first time you right-click on a file in the sidebar of Sublime Text, you might be a little surprised at how little is on this menu. Fortunately, there's an add-on package that adds a lot of extra functionality to this part of the app. I'll pull up Package Control and install the package called SideBarEnhancements. And now that it's installed, I'll right-click on a file and you can see the menu is much more extensive. There are a lot of commands in here, and I encourage you to explore them and find your favorites, but I'll show you my favorites in this video. First up is the Open in Browser menu here. If I choose Default, it'll open the current page in my system default browser, Safari in this case. With SideBarEnhancements installed, you can also do this from the command palette. Just type Browser and choose File, Open in Browser, Testing Server. The README file for SideBarEnhancements tells you how to configure it for both a testing server and a production server if you want to preview pages that require a server to process them. But for previewing static HTML files like these, the default settings are just fine. One thing I'd like to add, though, is a keyboard shortcut. The traditional keyboard shortcut for previewing files in a browser is F12, but as we've already seen earlier in this course, the F12 key is currently assigned to the Go-To Definition command here on the Go-To menu. On the Mac, we have this additional shortcut, Option Command Down Arrow, and since I prefer to use that one, that frees up F12 for use by SideBarEnhancements. If you're on Windows, well, you get to choose what you want to use F12 for, but if you want to use it to preview in a browser, feel free to follow along. The README file for SideBarEnhancements gives the instructions for setting this up. I'll use README Please to view the README for SideBarEnhancements. And now this is a really big README file because there are a lot of features in this package. But if I hit Command R or Control R on Windows, I can navigate the headings in this Markdown file. This is just opening Go to Anything in the symbol navigation mode that we saw earlier in this course. The F12 key section is what we're looking for, and the instructions for setting up the keyboard command are right here in F12 key conflict. The instructions actually show you how to set up a whole bunch of keyboard shortcuts, but the ones we're really interested in are the F12 shortcuts right here. So I'm going to copy those settings, and then I'll go to my Preferences menu, under Package Settings, Sidebar, and choose Key Bindings User. You can see all this does is open my user key bindings file that we've edited earlier in this course. And now I'll make sure that there is a comma after the last key binding in this file so that I can now paste my new key bindings from the README file. I'll save these changes, close this file, close the README, and now here in index.htm, I'll just hit F12. And there you go. Now, I actually do use Safari as my day-to-day browser, but when I'm doing web development, I prefer to use Chrome for its superior developer tools. Fortunately, you can configure SideBarEnhancements for your preferred previewing browser. We'll just go into Preferences again, Package Settings, Sidebar, and open Settings Default. This is the default settings file that is shipped with SideBarEnhancements, and as always, we do not want to edit this default settings file because it gets replaced anytime SideBarEnhancements is updated. Instead, we want to copy whatever settings we want to customize into our own user settings file. If I scroll down, you'll find the default browser setting right here. So I'll copy this and now choose Sublime Text, Preferences, Package Settings, Sidebar, Settings User. This opens a brand new empty user settings file. I'll create a JSON object and paste in my setting from the defaults. Now I can just edit this setting to point to Chrome. With that change made, I'll close down my settings files and hit F12 in index.htm. And there you go. I'm previewing in Chrome, even though Safari is my system default browser. The next thing SideBarEnhancements does for me is it makes it really easy to delete files quickly. I'll often create a new file, save it as example.htm, and I'll start to do some work in it, and then I'll change my mind. I've decided, actually, I don't want this file anymore. Now at this point, I could reach for the mouse, go and find that file in the sidebar, right-click, and delete it. But SideBarEnhancements actually gives me a feature that discourages me from using the sidebar, or at least it makes it possible to delete files without taking my hands off the keyboard. Now I can just open the command palette, type delete, and I've got this new file delete command here. This is provided by SideBarEnhancements, and if I hit enter, I'll be prompted to confirm that I want to delete the selected items. Now this confirmation is actually unnecessary because when I delete a file using this feature, it sends it to the trash on my system. So if I ever make a mistake, I can go and recover the file from there. So this speed bump of this confirmation, I actually don't want it, and we can remove it with a setting. Just go again into Preferences, Package Control, Sidebar, and we'll go into the default settings for sidebar enhancements. And here's the Confirm Before Deleting setting. I'll copy this, close the file, and paste this into my user settings file for the sidebar enhancements package. And I'll change the value from true to false. Back in example.htm, I'll now pop up the command palette and hit enter to choose File Delete. And just like that, the file is deleted. But we're left with this modified file that is no longer pointing to an actual file on my hard drive. It has converted this saved file into an unsaved file. Now, when I delete a file, I actually want it to go away. Fortunately, there's another setting to do this. It's right here. Close affected buffers when deleting, even if dirty. I'll select this line, copy it, and open my user preferences file again. And set this to true. Now one more time, I'll save this file to bring it back, and then I'll delete the file, and there you go. In one quick step, it is gone, and it's sitting in my trash if I need to get it back. The last feature of sidebar enhancements I want to show you is one for the mouse users. I showed you earlier in this course that you could use the Move File to New Group command, which is Command K, Command Up arrow, or Control K, Control Up arrow on Windows, to move a newly opened file into a new panel, and then you can close it and go back to single panel mode. Now that's pretty good if you're opening your files using Go to Anything and you want to keep your hands on the keyboard. But if you're more of a mouse user, you might be browsing for files here in the sidebar. So you might go and find in CSS your main.css file here. And now if I want to open this in a new panel, Sidebar Enhancements gives me this nice Edit to Right command here. If I select that, it opens the file in a right-hand panel. Now the problem is by default, when I close that file, it leaves that empty panel open, forcing me to go to View, Layout, Single to get back to my single panel mode. But you guessed it, there's a setting to improve this behavior. We'll just go into the defaults, and what we're looking for is right here at the bottom, Auto Close Empty Groups. I'll copy that and paste it into my user package settings file, set it to true, and now when I open main.css with Edit to Right, and I close it again, we go straight back to our single panel view. So previewing files in the browser with F12, deleting files quickly with the command palette, and Edit to Right for the mouse users, just 3 features of this really eclectic package that I suggest you spend even more time exploring. Sidebar enhancements.